Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I hope your day is starting off great. Yeah, come on up here. Come on, up. Show your face. Show your face. Doing videos from the couch in the morning. It's the best life there is. In this video, hopefully we're going to learn something. It's probably one of those videos that won't get a lot of views unless you all share it. And it's an example of a failed policy. It's a wake-up call. This is a tough love I'm going to give my own country, Canada. We need to wake up and we need to understand what's going on. Now, what triggered me to want to make this video is the headline here on Yahoo Finance, September 8th. All right, China's BYD to produce all EVs for Europe locally by 2028, the executive says. And here she is, Stella Lee, the number 2 executive for the company BYD. We are training ourselves to be more European in production. Now, why is it annoying for me to read this headline? Well, let me start at the beginning here. This was the headline back on September 13th, 2024. The U.S. locks in steep China tariff hikes. And those tariffs that were announced during the Biden administration were an increase of tariffs that were previously announced in the Trump administration. And the ones I want to focus on here are the 100% tariff on Chinese EV imports, 25% tariff on Chinese battery imports. It only took a few weeks for Canada to follow suit. Here's a headline, October 1st, 2024. Chinese-made EVs are now subject to a 100% tariff. What does this mean for Canadians? Well, I'll tell you what it meant for Canadians. It meant that Canadians could not buy a less expensive electric vehicle built by BYD. It meant that we were kind of forced to buying more expensive vehicles made by Tesla. Now, the reason we were given to justify these tariffs is pretty much the same reason that Donald Trump is using to justify his tariffs on imports from all over the world. China isn't playing fair. They're ripping us off. They have unfair production practices. Their government subsidizes the production of EVs. We have to protect ourselves from this threat. Now, the question is that true? Does the Chinese government unfairly subsidize their automobile industry? And we in North America, we do it purely the capitalist way, and we let the market and supply and demand rule, and we let our industries compete freely in a fair market economy? Well, no, that's far from reality. And if you do a simple search of list North American subsidies for the auto industry, you get this result. North American auto subsidies include federal and provincial and state programs like the Canadian government's deal with Volkswagen and the U.S. Inflation Reduction Act, providing tax credits for consumer EV purchases and manufacturer supply chain investments. Past examples include bailouts for GM and Chrysler and state incentives, but current subsidies focus heavily on promoting electric vehicle manufacturing and supply chains through tax credits and grants for battery and vehicle production facilities and blah, 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 blah. And if you do a little research, you can find articles like this. That's the Good Jobs First website. And they summarize some of the subsidies that we've had in North America. Recently in the United States, 6 states, Georgia, Kansas, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, and Tennessee, have already pledged more than $1 billion each to EV and EV battery facilities. Georgia has awarded the 2 largest auto subsidy packages in U.S. history. At least 6 states, Georgia, Kansas, Kentucky, Nevada, North Carolina, and Tennessee, have awarded their largest economic development mega deals in state history to EV battery projects. And I could read through this article and outline the tens of billions of dollars that have been given in subsidies to EV manufacturing here in North America. Even Canada, the province of Ontario, this is from the Province of Ontario website that's still up right now, Building Fortress AmCam, Ontario's AmCam growth plan. Ontario's AmCam growth plan envisions a new American and Canadian century as we work together to build Fortress AmCam, a renewed strategic alliance between the U.S. and Canada that's the beacon of stability, security, and long-term economic growth. And one of the pillars of AmCam is to protect the auto industry at all costs and impose tariffs on any imports of automobiles that could compete with our North American production. And incidentally, the 100% tariffs that Canada has applied to Chinese EV imports in solidarity with the United States to to keep those vehicles out of our market, that protectionist policy has resulted in how much EV production in Canada? How many electric vehicles are actually produced in Canada? Just about none. And this is an example of a failed policy. And it's not a liberal policy or a conservative policy or a Democrat policy or a Republican policy. It's all of them. Now, why does our industry need protection? Because our industry is not competitive. And that's why very few cars that are manufactured in Canada and the United States are sold outside North America. The majority of the market for our auto industry is ourselves. And the reason is that our industry is not competitive on a world stage. And now Canada's in the situation where last October, we imposed 100% tariffs on Chinese EV imports in solidarity with the United States. And now recently, the United States has turned around and backstabbed us and imposed tariffs on our export of automobiles to them. So now Canada's in the position where our export of vehicles to the United States has dropped 25% because the US has imposed an import tax on them. And our vehicles are not competitive. We can't sell them to the rest of the world because they're overpriced and there's less expensive options for the rest of the world. Now, our auto industry is a large industry domestically. Sales of automobiles for just Canada and Mexico and the United States is a big industry by itself, but it's not competitive worldwide. And so what ends up happening in the global market as the global market increases for everything is that local industry gets a smaller and smaller and smaller slice of the world pie. And more competitive companies like BYD can expand into that world market and start to dominate. And some proactive countries like the EU, who are now inviting BYD to manufacture locally and sell their products in Europe, are going to benefit from this. Because if you look at this from the top down, from 30,000 feet looking down, you have the situation where now Europeans will have access to less expensive choices, whereas North Americans will be restricted and only have access to more expensive choices. This protectionist policy that we've used has basically just resulted in making a lot of money for Elon Musk and costing consumers a lot of money. And because cars are expensive here, consumers that buy those cars will demand higher wages in order to afford this. And the cycle continues. We demand higher wages because we have to buy more expensive things. And because we have higher wages, we can't be competitive in manufacturing things that we can sell to the rest of the world. Protectionist policies in the long run just won't work. You'll end up continuing to protect what will eventually be an uncompetitive industry. You'll lock yourself into a higher cost option. And that's what we've done in Canada and the United States. And now Canada has a rude wake-up call because our partner, the partner that we did this with, has now backstabbed us. So now we produce expensive cars that the United States doesn't want to buy anymore. They've put tariffs on our automobile exports. And those cars are too expensive to sell anywhere else. And let me stop here for a second because I know some of you are probably thinking, well, it's true. The Chinese, they just subsidize their car industries and they're unfair and we have to protect ourselves from them. Let me ask you this question. If the government of China was unfairly subsidizing these EV makers, BYD being an independent from government Chinese auto manufacturer, if the Chinese government was unfairly subsidizing them, if the Chinese government was unfairly subsidizing their whole economy and spending all this money to flood the market with these cheap products, why is it that the United States and Canada are the countries with all the debt? Why doesn't China have a debt problem? How come you don't read about the debt is out of control in China? Why do the United States and Canada have the debt problem? Do you think maybe it's the other way around? Do you think maybe it's the United States and Canada, our governments, that throw all this money at these industries, that we really don't have a free market system, that we spend billions and billions and billions of taxpayer dollars to incentivize and give grants and all those things I read to you earlier in this video? And our governments do that with many, many different industries in our economies. Doesn't the math prove the point? Our governments are busy spending all this money to promote our industries, and they're borrowing the money from China to be able to do this. It's the North American governments that have all the debt. The math proves the point. We are the ones that subsidize industries. We are accusing the Chinese of doing exactly what we do. And meanwhile, a company like BYD has been able to produce a competitive, low-priced electric vehicle that many people have said is a better quality than a Tesla. And they're available almost everywhere in the world. They're driving around everywhere in Europe. They're driving around in Australia, Africa, China, Asia. They're the biggest car manufacturer in the world now, but we're not allowed to buy them unless we pay our governments 100% tariff. So Canada needs to wake up. We have to observe what's happened in Europe. The Europeans have now made a deal with BYD. They're going to get an injection of a new industry in Europe, new factories, new jobs, new dealerships, new advertising, and they're going to have the option to buy a less expensive, more competitive product, while we are locked into a more expensive government subsidized product. So the fact is, whether you like EVs or you don't like EVs, new technology will win in the long run. New technology always does. And the question Canada needs to decide is whether we want to be part of this industry or not. So let me close up by asking you a question. Do you believe that we should maintain our 100% tariffs on imports of Chinese EVs? Or should we do like the Europeans? Should we try and enter into some sort of a deal, perhaps with BYD, to incentivize them to come to Canada and start production of that product here to create Canadian jobs and give Canadian consumers a lower cost option? My feeling is we really don't have much of a choice here. We're going to have to change our strategy in the automotive sector. We really have to. We've done this in solidarity with the Americans because our automotive industries have been integrated for a long time. But now the Americans want to sever our integration, and they've imposed a tariff on our exports. So we're in the situation now that our product has become more expensive for the Americans to buy, so we're going to sell less to them, and our product is too expensive to sell anywhere else. So we have to do something. And my point of view is I see nothing wrong with making a business deal with a company that's based in China, as long as that deal benefits both parties. I hope this video was a little thought-provoking for you. I'm interested in your comments in the comments section. What do you think? Subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying my content. If you'd like to support my work on a monthly basis, consider becoming a channel member by clicking the join button below. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will catch you all on the next one.